Got about 15
You're on.
minutes.
Am I good?
Give or take.
Thank you, and I won't need 15 minutes, but thank you, everybody. And I sort of new being up here, but I know I'm in good spirits because I saw Nana's iPhone, and that's what we called my mom, so very well, thank you for that.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't really want your back
No,
on
no.
the camera. so
No,
I'm
no,
gonna-
Eric Matson, I'm from Joliet, lifelong resident of Joliet. Here's, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. I got notes in my pocket. This is a different crowd, and I'm not a professional politician. I'm working on it. But either way, we get there. We're going to get there. Joliet, my whole life. Went to St. Pat's School. Where we at? St. Pat's School. My dad, he was a labor guy. Local utility guy. He buried power lines for people. My mom did daycare out of her house. She did it all of our lives. With that, we did a lot of volunteer work at our house. We worked for the local homeless shelter. Every second Saturday, we cooked. It was I think that's where I get my edge to get back. That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
We did it forever. We keep going. I work at the fire station. I should go to the notes, but I'm not going to. Anyway, I went through high school, went to Catholic High, got out of that, and started working. I worked my way through JUCO. I wanted to be a policeman. Everybody has a dream. That was my dream. I go into JUCO, and policeman, I was taking tests all over the place, working. Somebody suggested, hey, why don't you take the fire department application? I said, I don't really want to be a fireman, but I'll take it anyway. Probably the luckiest thing she ever told me to do. I've been doing it for 26 years. I love the job. I've come a long way. I'm my local, the Fire Officers Association of Joliet. I'm the president. I'm pretty proud of that. We get a lot of stuff done. More charity work than you could ever imagine. I'm very vested in our community, and I want to say thank you for bringing me up here. This is part of the community, and I'm ashamed to admit I never really knew was up here, and I didn't spend a lot of time up here. I was doing hard work down in Joliet. The question begs, why am I running? I'm running to get things done, to tell you the truth. I tried to run a little bit ago when John Connor, they put John Connor in. I threw my name in a hat back then. It didn't work out. I'm in now. I want to give back as much as I can. It's part of who I am. There's a couple of things that lately have been on my mind that in my job I see, and it's something's got to be done. You know what? I'll tell you a little story. I'm a better storyteller than anything. So we go on a call the other day, and a 14-year-old girl took all of her mom's pain medications. Took the whole bottle. You're in, you're out. You're thinking, oh God, what could possibly happen? We get her up, we get her to the hospital, everything. You talk to her dad, and her dad had, and her dad's having a hard time with it. He said, we had no idea she was like that. Well, you know what? It happens, and it's part of it now. And you see more and more of it. And for mental health, and it's just the girl, and whatever's problem it is, we got to stop it. Between that, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I want to go to Springfield and figure it out. We got a couple other issues. We got some infrastructure problems. I think we need jobs. I'm all about, that Lion Bus Company came to town. How fantastic is that? I've seen it. We lost Caterpillar. We lost ComEd. We're losing jobs. We need to make the widgets again here. And whether or not I can control a lot of it, hey, I'm going to go down just like I do every day and fight. And that's what it's all about. I don't know what else to say except for closing. I was at Menards today, and I'm sorry, I'm a storyteller. I was at Menards today, and I'm one of these guys that picks up trash in the parking lot, and the guy walking behind me picked up a milk jug and a beer can, and he says something about, yeah, whoever threw that there, and I'm like, well, I don't know who threw it there, but I know who's picking it up. And then he sort of befuddled. I said, well, you know what? It's probably better to be part of the solution than part of the problem. And that's if we go forward with it, that's where I'm at. Questions? And if I can, before I take any questions, and I hate to be ignorant, and I'll be back. I promise I'll be back as much as I can. Lockport John's invited me as well, and when I was invited to this thing, I couldn't say no. You're too important up here. So if you would bear with me, and I'm going to get out of here at ASAP if it's okay. But if you got questions, I'll fire away. Yes?
I have a question. Are you going to retire as a fireman when you go downstairs? Because listening to John talk, you're down there a lot. How could you do both if you don't retire?
You know what? That's an excellent question. And I'm very fortunate. I have a job, I work one day, and I get 2 days off. We're able to trade shifts. Whatever it takes, I can give up my vacation time. There's only one thing I know. It's a public service job. I'm a public service person. There's other senators down there that are already doing it. So however it works, I'm going to do my best. When this came up, it was part of a transition anyway. I've got 26 years in. It might be, I'm going to see if I can handle both. If I can't, I won't let it falter. I won't disappoint people. Yes, sir.
What's your view on choice, sir? Because you know that the Republicans are going to come hard against this. It's one of their big items in their culture war. We are, luckily, I think it's pretty much enshrined up here in the state of Illinois. We're going to have pro-choice. What is your personal opinion, and how would you vote if that kind of people for you?
That's not an easy question, is it? Because we all have that in our mind.
But you're running on the.
I am running on it. You know what I always look at?
What is your opinion?
It's not my body. It's not my body.
Okay. Are you willing to stand up and ensure that here in Illinois, that choice remains on the table for the ladies here in the state?
Yeah, I will. It's not my body. We can go into, there's all kinds of debates. The Bible's 3,000 years old, whatever. I'm not about that. It's not my body. And that's what it comes down to. It's a tough one, though. I wouldn't, but hey, it's part of the job, isn't it? It's what I do for a living. Tough decisions, rather quick.
So for some of you in the audience, that's probably very important. He talked about his desire for public service and that he apparently had gathered signatures to run before when John Connor ran the first time.
Yeah, let's get an echo.
Giving me an echo.
Mute that.
Talking on the phone.
All right, trying again. I think I got rid of the echo. He said it was a desire for public service that brought him to it. And he said he's very fortunate in that he has a job where he works one day and gets 2 days off. Now, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work in Springfield, because I don't think they work that way. But that's just my personal thought. Any more questions? Debbie?
A question, what would you say your top 2 priorities would be when you get done to Springfield?
My first one is probably substance abuse and mental health. Something has to be done. Something, and I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah, I see it every day. I'm in it. I'm knee deep. When you see 2 heroin overdoses every day, 10 years ago we didn't see this. Hey, I'll put my hand up here and I'll tell you, I don't know the answer, but there has to be an answer. And here's my thing. I'm very passionate. I'm not polished. I'm not so much a speaker. I'm so sincere in that something has to be done. There has to be this pandemic. Something happened with these kids now. We see these kids, and if it's because they don't want to go to school, maybe they're stuck in their rooms for so long they're not social. I don't know, but these kids have it so tough right now. You wouldn't believe it. And the pandemic was, it hurt a lot of people. And I'll tell you what, but we helped a lot of people too. And I'm quite proud of that. I was one of the 5 people that stood in a room and said, hey, we need a vaccination clinic. Let's get it going.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm Exat. I like your idea about job growth. I think that may help with this mental health issue. However, Illinois, like California and New York State, are among the largest states that's losing population. And I think the population loss and the job loss is like a vicious cycle. So I want to ask you, do you have any opinion or plan on how to address both the job growth as well as the population?
You're 100% correct. We see people leaving. Where are they going? We know where they're going. They're going to Arizona where the jobs are. They're going to California. They're figuring out, at least the younger generation is figuring out, again, I'll put my hand up, I'm not 100% certain, but I do know we need the jobs back. If it takes the tax breaks, like Lion Electric, whatever it is, we have enough room, we have the warehouse capabilities. And I'm not a 100% warehouse guy, but I know we need the jobs. And we can see it every day. We see it going to the Jewel, where all they want you to do is use that automatic checkout line. Well, that's putting people out of work. And I don't know. I don't, like I said, but I'm one of the guys that'll sit in a room and try to figure it out. That's all I can do.
Terry?
Want me to take more questions? Oh, I just wanted to know, Terry Ransom, nice to meet you. I'm a member of Moms Demand Action, and I just wanted to know your stance on gun control.
That's a tough question.
Stricter laws, just what do you think we need? Or we don't?
If anything, people have a right to bear arms. I think that we should have more responsibility for the people who get that right. And you should be held accountable. And whether or not something happens, I'm not a gun person. I work with people, and that's a great thing about my job. I have an influence where we are so far right down the middle. I can talk to a guy about this. I just think, and what I tell them, they can have all the guns they want, but they should be responsible for them. And that's, hey, isn't it a win-win situation? You can have all your guns, but just be responsible.
Make sure you lock them up or find some way to, so your young kids don't get to them. Like just recently, we had an incident in Chicago.
Gary, did you have a question?
Yes. Okay. You're from Joliet. I promise I will try not to hold that against you. Okay. They know how parochial I am against that. Okay. But one of the things you mentioned was infrastructure. Okay. How exactly are you going to make sure that we get our share of the infrastructure money? Because one of the things is we pay a lot of taxes in DuPage Township, and we pay a lot of taxes out of Bolingbrook. But as far as getting our fair share, no, we don't get it. So how are you going to, as a state senator, make sure that we get our piece of the pie?
And I'm not going to deflect on that question. And I'm not 100% sure on the answer, because the mayor of Crest Hill, when I got to talk to him, you know what he said? He said Crest Hill is about, it's as big as a pea. And guess what we get all the time? Nothing. He said, Eric, what can we do? And I told him, I said, Ray, hey, again, I'll go down there, and all I can do is work for it. And he said, Eric, you don't get it. He said, our state rep said, we don't have one. We don't have anything. Just we get nothing. And to be 100% honest, that's not right. They ought to get something, and there's money out there.
Well, that's the question. I know Crest Hill is about 20,000 people. Our township is about 87,000 people. And he gets nothing for 20,000, and we get nothing for 87,000.
Which is wrong.
It seems, and one of the attitude up here is, when I talk to people, is they think everything goes to Joliet.
Right. Well,
Okay.
you drive up here, you see it. Everybody thinks it's good, but they're still paying higher taxes, which isn't fair, But I'll go down there, I'll work as hard as I can, and that's what it's all about. And even on the federal side, we hear about it, where Illinois pays a lot more than Montana and gets nothing back. Where's the fairness in it? And, all I can say is I'll do my best. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you we're going to do this and we're going to do that. All I can say is I want the shot. I'm going to go down there and work as hard as I can, and I hope you believe me. Next.
I am trying to unmute. It is back to giving me troubles again. Okay. All right. Maybe I'm unmuted. It still says connected, so. I'm not that multi-talented. All right, I'll take one more question.
Remember you turned on the volume.
Yeah, no, but I made my phone the host.
She had a
So
question.
it's unmuted. No, she's just looking. Okay, we'll take one more.
Question? No.
All right, then I have one. I have some friends that live in the Joliet area, and they recently received a polling phone call. And the phone call clearly seemed to be trying to convey a message One, that your opponent is anti-union and pro-Republican. I would hope that wasn't you. That's all I would say. My question to you, when there have been labor disputes in the area, since you've been interested in being a representative for some period of time, have you attended the pickets?
Yeah, I marched with the nurses. I was there. And hey, every day. You know what I told you before? I work one day, I get two off. I work 56 hours a week. Every 2 days we were there. We made our shirts, we back them up. And hey, you can knock me down and I'll get back up. I'm all for help. You know, and the nurses, they got a deal on that.
Was it your campaign that was alleging that Rich was anti-union? I got a call from Darren Lester. He says that your volunteer shows up at his door, says the exact same thing. Rachel Ventura is anti-union, and that she might even be running as a Republican.
No.
So I mean, first of all, was it you
No,
or a volunteer?
hand to God. Hand to God, and nobody that was walking for me would even, and I know I left a message for somebody, and I told you then, and I'll tell you now, I won't get dirty. So as much as it's going to be and bad, I would not do that. And like I said, I'll swear on an honest grave that was not me, and I won't do it. Hey, if we can't get through this thing, you know, with some dignity, and that's all there is to it, and I won't do it. So, and I promise you right now, I won't get dirty. That's all I got, my word, and I won't break it.
All right, we're going to try to get back out here again.
And I asked around for that, and I never got an answer, so I don't, and anybody, no, I can't imagine half the people don't know the issues. So, anybody else? No? Yes?
With the issue that's happening, going on with the civil rights issue with the mayor of Joliet and with the death that we had of the Laurie, what is your stance on it with holding police accountable for things that happen within the Joliet Police Department? Because they have a long history of not being fair to black and brown people.
That's a good question.
That's a great question. It's not only good, it's great. And with that, and I'm fortunate, I get to work with these guys. Hey, we back each other up, with the shootings, everything. And I wasn't there for half that stuff, but that doesn't make it right, And I can't make excuses, And in the police department, everybody's, we hate reform, we hate reform. I'm a fireman, and we bring new stuff in every day. We got to do this, we got to do that, and it's all about reform. Nobody likes it, but guess what? You need it. 99% of the police department, 95. How about that? Only when they want to do it, they'll put their hand up and say, well, we need reform. You know what happens? And they'll tell you flat out. And I know for a fact, when you raise your hand to get a badge on you, here's you go, you get your training, you go through it, you ride along for 6 weeks, you learn everything, this is how you go to court, this is what you do. You know what your next bit of training is?
On the street.
There's no additional training. You go to court, you do everything you do. You know what that guy taught you in your first 6 weeks. And police department, they'll put it up. They'll say, yeah, we need training. I don't know their jobs, their tasers. I don't so much as know about all that. But for what it is, I won't defend people like that. I work with them every day, and I'll continue to help them. We're in it together. And, you see what happened in Shorewood the other day. There was an ambulance call. The guy went there, guess what happens? The ambulance gets out, the guy's got a gun. Oh boy. And I can't even imagine being those two guys. And typically, when you're on an ambulance, you're a younger guy. And I can't imagine some guy comes out with a gun and starts pointing at you. I don't, and here we go with guns again. And I don't know. But like I said, I won't take responsibility for it. But hey, reform is good, and I think if implemented the right way, reform is great.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for being here, Eric. We're going to go ahead and get started with our next candidate's introduction.
Many of you in this room know me. My name is Rachel Ventura. I am currently a Will County board member, but I'll give you a little background for those who don't know me. I was born in Joliet. My parents were in the union. My dad was a bridge tender. My mom is a retired legal public school. I later attended Benedictine University, and I got a lot more familiar with the Bolingbrook-Lisle area. And then I became an actuary. My first degree is in mathematics, and I worked for an insurance company. Moved to California, worked for another insurance company, and I started to see a pattern of these companies making millions and billions of dollars off of not paying out premiums, or paying out death claims, paying out health claims. And I realized at the young age of 22 that I didn't want to do that anymore. I had done it for 4 years, and I felt like I was selling my life away, my soul away, so that somebody else could make millions and millions of dollars. At the time, I was actually volunteering at the Wildlife Way Station, working with large cats like tigers and serpals, and I wanted to go back to school to be a veterinarian, so I did. I went back, got my degree in biology, and then I got engaged to someone in the Navy, and we moved around. I ended up becoming a naturalist, and I worked at Georgia State Parks, restoring our long lake pine forests, and helping our endangered gopher tortoises. That was about the time I started getting more political. Now, my dad was on the county board 40 years ago, long before I was born. I'm just kidding, I'm turning 41 this year. So I started learning more about how grant dollars and federal dollars and state dollars are impacting things like our state parks. I moved to Washington with my husband at the time and got involved with protesting against Monsanto, BT toxins, hurting our bees and our wildlife. And so then I started doing rallies and organizing, and that was really a big step into doing what I do now. And I didn't know it at the time. Because we've moved around, I've had a plethora of different jobs, everything from selling scrapbooking supplies to working as a substitute teacher. But a lot of what I have found in my life is working with people has been very rewarding in a lot of different ways. I consider myself an idea person and someone who is a problem solver. So as I stumbled my way into politics, I found that that's a really great skill set for this job. I moved back in 2016. I went through a divorce. It was very difficult for my family, and when I came back here, I was surprised at the state of Joliet. I was upset with our crumbling infrastructure, trash in our trees and on our streets, and it really just looked like people didn't care about my hometown anymore. And I remember complaining to my dad about it, and he said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, well, what can I do about it? And he said, go run for office. And I remember telling my dad that was the stupidest thing because I was going through a divorce, and who runs for office in the middle of the divorce? 2 weeks later, I found myself down at the clerk's office getting petition papers, and the most awkward person in the world going up to people saying, where do you live? Will you sign this? And they're looking at me like, okay, stop her, get away from me. I got better over time. I lost my first race for city council, and I ran for county board next. I learned a lot in the time. I learned a lot about civics, and I learned a lot about organizing, and a lot about people. This just started my 4th year on the county board, and we've done a lot of great things on the county board. And I couldn't have done it alone. We've got people here in the room who have done it, but some of the things we're proud of, that one of the things I ran on was pushing Will County to be a greener county. And we have made a lot of headway in that. Whether it's talking about our renewable gas project that we're doing with our landfill right now, we are connecting bike paths, we have acquired more property from our forest preserve, both active land, as well as things like the new nature center here in Bolingbrook. We've started our first organic farm at the forest preserve. We banned BT toxins on all of our forest preserve properties. I took some notes because I didn't want to forget. Oh, yes, we passed the Green Distribution Compact. We then worked on our energy conservation plan. We passed that this last year. We just signed up to adopt the climate action plan, and we moved our energy contract to 75% renewable energy. We were pushing for 100%, but we negotiated it down to 75 so we could some Republican buy-in on that. And so these are all things that we've done to move Will County to be green. We want to keep doing things like that. We've offered EV charging station grants, recycling. We continue to do things like that. Some of the other things that I worked on when I first got into office was moving Fairmont to public, keeping them on public water. So they had infrastructure issues, and their township couldn't afford the repairs, and they're looking to privatize the water. So the county stepped in, worked with them and the city of Joliet to make sure that they maintain public water. And I know several of you guys are on private water, and you know how expensive that is. how detrimental that can be to your finances, family finances. So that's one of the things I want to safeguard is public water. And I also been a big advocate at the county for public broadband. And this is something I think we can do at the local level as well as the state level. So moving into some of the state stuff. So we've done some historic, we as a state, some of our legislators are here, like Natalie Manley, thank you. They've done some really great things in the last few years, especially since Ronner's been gone, but even since Madigan's been gone. Things like passing CJA, things like criminal justice reform, legalizing and decriminalizing marijuana. But there's so much more we can still be doing. We still have Prairie State open, which is one of the dirtiest coal plants in the United States. We still have abuse of power, like we've seen in Joliet, and we need to make sure that we are actively going after people who abuse their power. We need to get rid of things like no-knock warrants. Failure to comply often results in arrest of our black and brown individuals. These are things that we need to be focusing on. I definitely will safeguard a woman's right to choose. I've been on picket lines, I've been at fundraisers, I have knocked doors for HB1, I will do what it takes to make sure that we have that right. Because nobody is legislating the rights of a man's body, and no one should legislate the rights of a woman's body. It is our autonomy to make our own choices. Okay, some of the other things, let's see, where am I at here? Oh, so like I was saying before, we couldn't do it all alone. And one of the things I've learned about running for office is how amazing it is to empower others, to be their own advocates. Working with new candidates who just started, or people who knocked on doors for the first time, want to get more involved, whether it's just researching more about the candidates they're voting for, becoming a volunteer for a candidate, or running for office themselves. And this is something that, no matter if I'm in office or I'm not in office, I promise you I will continue to do this because I see how important it is to have a democracy of other people. And that means everyday people, right? Whether it's a single mom, whether it's a fireman, a carpenter, a doctor, a lawyer, it doesn't matter. Whatever job you have, whatever walk of life you have, it's important that you feel you have a voice and that you're represented. And so it's exciting to me to see how many people have come onto our campaign and been a part of this, from elected officials down to someone just showing up for the first time that I've never done anything, or I just graduated high school and I want to know how to get involved. And so this is what my campaign is really doing. It's bringing people together. And in a really tough election year with Republicans at our throats, this is so important that we are working as a team, up and down this district, up and down this state. And in the wake of some of the stuff we've seen in the news with Madigan and some of the other elected officials who are looking at their court dates or stepping down from their seats, we need our party to be the most ethical, honest party we can be. We need to show that our policies are the things that win elections. And we can only do that if we can stand on our honest background, our backbone. And we need to have elected officials who stand on that. And I've created a brand over the last 5 years that love me or hate me, I'm honest, right? You ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what I think. You may not like, Gary can tell you this, you may not like my answer, but I'm going to stand by that. And so that's one thing I can promise you that I will always be. I will be straight up with you, I will be honest with you, I will make choices with integrity, I will do the hard work, and I will help other people to the best of my ability. So I got some other things written down. One other thing I think I want to end on though, because I'm sure y'all have questions for me, is electability. And I feel this is an important word, especially for a woman to say, because that's one of our downfalls at women in politics, is they always say, well, what about the electability? But let's really look at what's going on right now. With people like Rayvine and Richard Urban and Bailey running for governor, there's going to be a lot of money in this race. And the Republicans are going to start picking at some of their old issues. Because, let's face it, they don't have any new ideas. So when that happens, they're going to come down and say, well, remember those pension wars we had when Ron was in office? They're going to be bringing that back. And I am very pro-union. I have stood on every picket line since I have been back, whether it's steel workers, nurses, multiple teacher lines, the auto workers. I've helped anyone I can if they want to unionize. I've tried to work with warehousers and Teamsters to try and make sure more places unionize, including Starbucks. So what's important about this is that companies used to offer pensions because it was giving back to the community. And I would love to see us get back to that place. And I'm going to safeguard the pensions we have in this state. My mom is a retired teacher, makes $23,000 a year. I'm going to be defending her pension when I'm down there. But what makes it hard for the electability is when the Republicans come after us and say, well, you've got a firefighter who's going to be double dipping on pensions, making $150,000 a year. That doesn't help us win elections. And we need to think about that if we don't have a strong candidate walking doors, defending the things that people truly believe in, we're going to get lambasted with the millions of dollars coming after us for things that are outside of our control. So I want you to think about that. I've always been honest. Even if we haven't always seen eye to eye, I will work with you. I will be a strong defender of the Democratic Party. I will knock on those doors. I will turn out voters, and we will win in November. That's it. I'll take questions. Rachel.
Questions? Zero.
Just, all things may be right, but there were some questions that were thrown as well, I'm going to ask you. You've already answered the pro-choice question, but about, I think it was, you said talk about Illinois losing population and job creation, so how would you, as a, in Springfield, how would you combat that, how would you turn it around?
Right, the question was how would Rachel combat the job loss that we seem to be experiencing in Illinois?
Well, I will say that not everyone's leaving. I came back. So I do think keeping our college kids here is super important, and that means having innovative jobs right here. So Lion Electric is really exciting, but this is why I think public broadband is important. When we have competitive broadband, whether it's with the private companies or a public option through our government, that means companies can compete. And that means you can have access out in rural areas, in townships that don't currently have good access. The wave of the future we saw after COVID is technology. And so if we are not competitive there, we will continue to lose jobs. Okay? Now, from the climate aspect, we do need to move quickly into renewable energy. And CJ has a great first step for us to move in that way. It's got incentives. The REV Act has more incentives, especially in our economies that are more downturned, for companies to come here, like Lion Electric, like Rivian, and we want to encourage that. But we also need window companies that are creating windows that keep our energy efficient, door companies, solar tiles for our roofs. I mean, this is the way for the future, and we can either be reactive and miss out on these opportunities, or we can be proactive and be the first to bring it here. And I think Richard's done a great job of laying the groundwork, and now we need to aggressively go after these companies and say, Illinois has laid the foundation for you to come here. And then we bring those jobs here, and that will bring people back.
Rachel, you might want to tell them what CJEP is.
The Clean Energy Jobs Act.
There you go. Carolina.
Yeah, what are your views on, as far as legislation for nonviolent drug offenses?
Yeah,
The question was about nonviolent drug offenses and abuse.
So I am a fan of restorative justice. So right now in the county, we have a lot of different drug courts, like mental health drug court, veteran drug court, and what this does is veteran court. What this allows people to do is not have a record, but go through a healing process. I'd like to see more of that and make sure that people have a chance to re-enter society. You shouldn't have a lifetime sentence because you make one mistake in your life, or maybe you make 10 mistakes in your life. Guess what? We all have a chance to change at any given moment, and we need to make a way for that. Otherwise, you basically persecute that person their whole life. And so we want to make sure, yes, we're keeping people safe. If they committed a crime, we want to hold them accountable, but there has to be steps to come back into society without the stigma of having your past mistakes haunt you.
Sorry, can I elaborate on that?
Follow. Go ahead.
Well, what about like sentencing for people that commit, like specifically sentencing for people that commit nonviolent drug offenses?
So the question is about sentencing for nonviolent drug.
Like, should they be sentenced?
Should they be sentenced
in the criminal justice system,
in
or
the
should there
criminal
be
justice system,
alternatives?
or should they be?
So currently we have mandatory minimums. I would like to do away with mandatory minimums. That allows a judge to make the decision based on a case-by-case basis. I think that is so important because somebody in front of me could have one long-term history of hurting other people while maybe using drugs, and the other person might have tried it one time, right? So we do need to get rid of mandatory minimums. But with the drug courts, the way that works though is your sentencing, you don't spend time in jail, you spend time through a program that would help you get off of drugs, help you get sober, the support you need, housing, jobs, stuff like that. So those are, in my opinion, a better way to restore the justice of that individual who maybe needed mental health services and ended up in doing drugs instead. So again, I think a judge making those determinations, and those programs are voluntary. The person has to want to go into it. So some people might opt for jail. Unfortunately, that's their choice. But if we don't even give them the option to go into these programs, then we're stuck with our mandatory minimums on sentencing, and we're not really providing a pathway for that person to come back to our society.
Charlotte?
But isn't the mandatory minimums on the federal level, not on the state level?
I would have to look into that, and I would really have to look into
It is
that.
on the federal level, so there's probably nothing you can do on a state level.
Well, we can go sit outside our congressman's office and ask them to look into that, and I would help people who want to do that.
Because actually, I belong to Mothers Against Mandatory Minimums. So it is very much state level, federal level.
Gary, did you have a question?
Yes, you know, I have seniors talk to me, hundreds of them every week. And it's very nice to have all these progressive issues that you're for and that, but they're more interested in the bread and butter issues. And one of the biggest bread and butter issue that they have is property taxes. Okay, they're seniors, they don't have kids in school, yet they're paying 75% of their property taxes to the schools. Now, according to our state constitution, the state is a primary responsibility for schools. Okay, they're supposed, and yet, at the last thing I heard, we're paying, the state is covering less than 40% of the cost of the schools. Now, how are you going to do, or what can you do to start getting the state to pay more towards the schools and lower their property taxes? Because I can tell you right now, the seniors vote.
Right.
And if someone can tell them how they're going to be lowering their property taxes for the schools, they will vote.
So I have a lot of ideas for that, but it's going to take the work of getting everyone in the Senate and the House on board. So the idea that it's not even my idea, it's the LaSalle state tax. So this is our commerce up, it's like our Wall Street in Chicago. And we have either a transaction tax or a small fee on that, and put it all towards education, we could get that number up to 70%. But for every dollar invested in local schools, needs to be $1 off of their property taxes. And this is about taxing the rich, making sure they're paying their fair share so that we can educate our youth and bring those innovative jobs back to Illinois. So it's a full circle. Not any one of these things are in a vacuum on their own. They're all interrelated. And we can't keep putting property taxes and the rest of our tax burdens on the working middle class or elderly who are on a set income. So it is important that we fund our schools, fully fund our schools, have equitable schools. If 70% of our schools were funded by our state, then that 30% at the local level, that inequality would be so much different than what we see today. And so yes, we definitely have to have education funding reform, and we need to find a way to bring dollars in that does not tax the middle and working class.
Well, following up on that,
Yes.
it's all great to have these altruistic ideas, but we need more concrete ideas because they want to hear concrete solutions to how they can get their property taxes, down. And they don't want to hear, well, we're going to be working on this, or we're going to be working on that, or we're going to be taxing the rich to do it. We need concrete proposals as to how to do it, not altruistic ideas.
Well, the truth of it is in every budget, you either bring in more income or you cut spending. And we have cut and cut and cut at the state. And we cannot increase at the middle class. So to me, this is not altruistic. This is what our leaders need to be doing. Our leaders need to pull everyone else in the direction we need to be going. And taxing the rich is the direction this entire country needs to be going, including Illinois. And I'm not going to stop banging that drum until we start taxing the rich.
Just a comment, if we're, Illinois is a payer state, how can you rectify that? We're never going to have lower taxes if we're a payer state.
Well, that one is a federal one. This one I know. But that's no Foster's
If we don't
line.
get enough federal dollars and we're giving what we should get to all the states who need more help, then how do you solve any?
Well, the federal dollars and state dollars are different pots of money. So for the state dollars, if we implement that tax on our trading companies in Chicago, then that dollars can go into the state budget. So, and I might not get there, Gary, but this is what I'm gonna try to do.
Terry?
Gun control.
Guns?
Yes.
Can you address that, please?
Yes, so I do think that we need to close loopholes. I do think that we need to have a training program. And this is something that I would introduce or work with others to introduce at our state. What I mean by that is you can't go get a driver's license to ride a motorcycle or a car unless you take some type of training. I see them down at JJC every Saturday morning. There is no reason we cannot have the same type of programming for guns. So I was on the rifle team in JROTC when I was in high school. And before we could ever touch the gun, we had to take safety tests. We had to take how to put your gun together, how to clean your gun. What are the laws of your gun, right? What happens if someone steals this gun and shoots someone? You had to know all these things before you ever got to go on the range and shoot that gun. But we don't have that same expectation of people in America. To me, that is not an undue burden, right? Learning how to shoot your gun, clean your gun, safety, and the law of what happens if someone commits murder with your gun? What is your liability? What is your obligation to report that to the police? These are things that everyone should be able to know and answer, just like what the rules of the road are to drive a car. So I'd like to see that implemented, and in that process, whether, I'd like to work with others to decide, is it a couple weeks, is it a month, how long, is it one class, what is the best thing? But during that time, you can have mental health counselors in the room actually observing the things people are saying and doing, as well as a mental health questionnaire, so that when someone is getting their gun license, we are protecting their life. Because the reality of gun deaths, I know we all care about the kids. People are getting shot in schools, and I have children myself in school, and I'm very nervous about them too. But the reality is, most gun deaths are suicides by men over the age of 40. And we need to start helping mental health services, getting them into everybody's hands. With COVID, we all need it. Okay? I don't think there's anyone in this room who can say they're 100% mentally healthy every single day. We all need to be able to have that help. And it shouldn't take someone, walking into a gun store, buying a gun and shooting themselves in order to, bring that to light. So we need to do a better job. I think we can do that through still providing people. FOIAs are important. Not FOIAs, the FOIA part is so important. I want to make sure we hold on to that. I know that's at jeopardy of being lost. But I also think training and some type of mental health filter needs to happen as well.
Okay, one last question. Al?
Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate your big ideas, and like Gary was saying, there are some very altruistic ideas, but I'm also interested in outcomes and solutions. And as a Will County board member, I haven't had a chance to address you directly, and I would like for you to address me and the group in your no vote to fill the vacancy of Ken Harris, because you've got big ideas, you've got a lot of words to say around how you're going to solution for them, but when you're looking to make everyday decisions for local constituents like us in a community that you don't necessarily represent, and you're talking about beating that drum to get the party, the Democratic Party, on the same page, you voted no with your Democrats to fill that vacancy, and you provided a very specific reason. Would you please provide that here?
Yep. So I was told, let me give this background for those who don't know. When Jennifer Bertino-Tarrant was running for executive, the caucus at that time had told us that we should appoint Denise Winfrey because she was not running for office. And this would not give any undue pressure or any undue bonuses to someone running for office. And so at that point, and then I agreed to that. And so now fast forward, initially we were told it wasn't our appointment. Okay, and we were told it was Jennifer's appointment, so I didn't have to say one way or the other about it. In fact, you and I even spoke about it a few months prior. And then, fast forward, we're told by our state's attorney that we have to appoint a chair, that chair has to appoint someone's name, and then that is when it became our choice to that appointment. And so then I was told then that they were going to pick Al, and I said, okay, well, you guys had us vote against Jennifer, but now you want us to vote for L when what happened to
Who's you guys?
our caucus, our Democratic caucus. And so then I said I would not be voting on that. We talked about abstaining, and in the meeting I did vote no, and I clearly stated it was for that reason and that reason alone that I would be voting no on that, because I wasn't going to be a hypocrite when they wanted us to vote against Jennifer on this one, and then all of a sudden now we're supposed to throw that same reasoning out the window And
So your colleague Denise Winfrey also voted yes. Many of your colleagues on the Democratic caucus also voted yes. And we understand the Republicans abstained. You made a very hard no vote. In addition to the explanation that you're giving now, you also talked about incumbency as well, and that you didn't feel that that was appropriate. Help me understand your efforts or your campaign's efforts to support our appointed candidate in being now on the ballot.
what do you mean by incumbency?
Incumbency, that so there was a discussion on the floor regarding an appointed candidate also running for office. You had made those statements, and then you raised concerns about that specifically.
Correct, because that's what we were told before, that we were not going to do that. So then,
And every candidate that threw their hat in also had expressed interest in running. So every candidate in that position was really coming off of the same playing field.
okay, and I had talked to Mimi about picking someone completely different. Not Daryl, not Gary, not Al. It was her choice. And if you notice, I voted no on Mimi for that chair vote. I voted against her.
The vote was to fill a vacancy.
There was 2 votes. The first vote was
Yes.
to appoint a chair. And I told Mimi beforehand that I would be voting no if she was going to bring any person running for office forward. And I did exactly that, Al. You may not like my decision, but I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I stood on my word then, and I will stand on my word
That
today.
is happening. in
Well,
this moment.
clearly you two don't agree on something that happened, and I think we should move on. Is there another question for, yep?
Same question that I asked before about the issue that we're having with the Lori case, and what are you going to do to assist Juliet with police reform because of how they're treating the black and brown people in the area?
I'm not sure I could.
Okay, I'll recap it. Yes, I am very, very familiar with this case and what is happening in Joliet. And I myself have called out our chief of police. Now we've gone through 3 since then, so we've got new ones. And I've called out our mayor, both for beating up those young men, as well as other tactics he did long before he beat up those young men. And I will continue to make sure that we have, our police are held accountable for, not all police are bad. I'm going to be very clear with this. My grandfather was a sheriff deputy. I am not anti-police. I am not defund the police. I do think we need police reform, and I think we need to make sure our police are serving our communities. I think most police officers do exactly that. I'm very clear on that. However, when there are people who are not doing that, they need to be held accountable because they make everyone else look bad. They hurt both our citizens as well as the police who they're supposed to be serving, right? It makes it more dangerous for any police officers to show up. They're not as trusted, etc. So there is an investigation going on right now with the policies that are for our police department. I have fully cooperated with that agency. I will continue to do so. I have filed things with our Attorney General. When I say I'm going after these guys for abuse of power, I'm telling you, I am going after these guys for abuse of power.
Daryl, last question.
So Rachel, you mentioned 2 words that you mentioned them on several times tonight. You talked about you not being hypocritical, that you're not a hypocrite, and you mentioned integrity and standing up and standing on your word. I'm going to remember that as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rachel, for joining us tonight. Much appreciated. We do have regular business.